Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast. This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are coming to you from the 21st floor of the iconic Alico building in downtown Waco. Rogue Media Network, which graciously produces Central Texas Life with Ann Harder, is now in this fabulous space. And who better for me to have for my very first podcast here in the Alico building than the woman who was dubbed the Queen of the Alico, Helen Querum, who happens to be my aunt. Full disclosure, she is the younger sister of my mother, Ruby Wells. And as long as I've known Aunt Helen, she's come to work here in the Alico building, and that started in 1951 before I was on the scene.
Right.
So, but you were coming to this building even before you graduated from high school and came to work at the life insurance company.
Oh, yes. I was privileged to come with my two older sisters that had worked in the building. And the oldest worked in the early 40s. And my first trip here, I probably was about 10 or 11. And needless to say, I got into trouble because I started throwing little paper airplanes out the window.
Did you really?
Yes, and they had to reprimand me and say, young lady, you don't do those things.
We don't behave that way in the Alico building. Well, she worked for WACO for
yes, Mary Holiday.
Mary Holiday.
No, that was the oldest. The next oldest worked in the medical department.
Okay.
And she was one of the ladies in what is often termed the medical department, but it was really underwriting. And she was there about 3 or 4 years. And then my other sister came along and worked in another department. So I was well represented by my family in this building early on.
Well, and so tell me, when Mother came to work here after she graduated high school.
From high school.
Yeah. She worked for American Amicable, though, right?
She worked for Amicable at the time.
Yeah, let's get this life insurance thing straight. So originally it was Amicable Life Insurance Company.
Yes.
ALICO.
Yeah. Amicable started its life in Waco in 1909, and it existed as an amicable company until 1965 when we were merged with another company out of Dallas called American Life.
Okay.
And then we became American Amicable in 1965.
Yeah. Well, you've seen a lot of changes in this building and throughout your career working in the building. You did come to work, though, for Amicable Life.
Yes, I did in 1951.
And so what was your job when you worked
my
here?
original job was a messenger, and that was such a delight because all newcomers, which was usually people just out of high school and stuff like that, they put them on messenger, and your job was to take carriers that would go from department to department, delivering the paperwork that was ready for its next level in order to be issued as a policy. And so that required a good deal of roaming around the building and knowing people, and that's what started my love affair with the Alico building.
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity to see an interview that you had done with the city of Waco in 2011. And that was a full 3 years after you had retired
Yes.
from working here in the building, after 56 years of being here, just to get the timeline here. But in 2011, it was a big anniversary for the building.
Yes, the building celebrated its 100th year of existence in 2011, August of 2011. And it was quite an exciting feeling all over town, and everybody was talking about us, and it was just a wonderful thing. Yeah. And I enjoyed very much being part of it.
Well, so the city, Larry Halsey, of course, one of the producers, or the producer of this, about a 22-minute video. And you can find it on Vimeo. Just Google Helen Quirham, the Alico building. It'll popped right up for me. But it was great because there were some fabulous archival pictures that you have, and we have some of them here on the table in front of us, different photographs, and we'll drop some of these in so you can see them better. But the view from the Alico of what downtown Waco looked like before
it's
the
exceptional.
tornado and then
it's
after.
Exceptional. And this particular photograph, it's taken from the north side of the building, looking down at the City Hall. And all of the area around it where buildings did exist no longer existed after the tornado. And it's not the true picture of today's downtown City Hall, but it's part of our past, and it's a good thing to see.
Well, of course, the view from up here, and you can see somewhat. I mean, to have this kind of a backdrop for our podcast is remarkable for me. But I have literally just a few minutes ago walked in, my first chance to look and see the vista and pick out all these wonderful landmarks of Waco, and you got that every day you came
every
to work.
Day. And then before we had air conditioning, which was in September of 1954, we were able to raise the windows and, of course, lower the top part of the window for the air to circulate, and you can always enjoy the change of seasons. So wonderful in the spring and in the fall. The breezes that would come through were phenomenal. And it was exhilarating. And I enjoyed that also, but the view was always fantastic. When the weather changed, you could see the clouds coming, and it was just wonderful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the origins of the building itself. This was really on the map as far as being the tallest building south of Mason-Dixon for a period of years. Correct? So,
Yes.
yeah, how was the intention that it would be this tall a building?
Well, no, from what I can detect from the plans, the original discussion centered around about an 8-story. About that time, that was all they were building, because until the Industrial Revolution took place and the formation of steel beams, all of the buildings could not be anything taller than 7 or 8 floors. For that reason. So as the Industrial Revolution just took place and we could get steel, we could import a marble, things were changing, and so they decided that they would go on and build, add a few more floors. Then it reached 17, and at that time it was kind of a funny little story wherein the builders of the Alico building got into a little bit of a spat with the people of Dallas, Texas, who were building the Adolphus Hotel. And each party would say, my building is going to be taller than your building. And it was in the newspapers back and forth what was going to happen. So ultimately, for our astute leadership, we went on and extended it to 22 floors in order to be classified as the tallest building west of the Mississippi and south of the Mason-Dixon line. And we won the first bout.
At least for a while.
Yeah, the tallest building that came along later that really did scope us out was, as best as we can tell, down in San Antonio. about the 1928, 29, somewhere in there, one of the residents of San Antonio sent us a letter to let us know that uh, uh, we had been surpassed by one of their buildings. And uh, as the corporate industry revealed, there was a lot of oil in Texas about that time, and so they were beginning to build more and more office buildings, and so more cities were having that privilege of building tall buildings, and but it took them a long time to get taller than my Alico building.
Well, and of course, you count to the very tippy top of the flagpole, which brings it to what,
305 feet
Okay.
from what was considered the street level,
Mm-hmm.
not the other level.
Of course, we were just saying, and I had seen on the interview you'd done before that there was a fellow who would actually climb up that and
The painter.
paint that top ball gold and then the flagpole silver.
Yeah, about every couple of years or so, he would come around and say it's time to paint it. And of course, our leadership said, "Hey, have at it," and then he signed the proper documents, of course. And within about 25 minutes, we had a new coat of paint on our flagpole, and we were also very excited over that and if we were down on the street, we'd look up and see the little man scurrying up the.
That's a braver man than I, that's
Yeah,
for sure.
some of the kiddos that have gone to lunch and they would come back and they say, "Oh, he's up there, he's up there,"
Well,
because nobody else was allowed to do that, of course.
I imagine. Just maintenance of the building. I mean, these are beautiful windows, but in order to clean them, I mean, somebody's got to.
And we had
Scale
a
up
regular
the
team
side.
that would come ever so many years and wash the windows, and that would be a delight to have that. But as we did go into developing our air conditioning system for the building, which they used the shaft in the back of the building as the floor to house 15 tons of air for each floor. And so we were able to place a thermostat on each floor that would allow the company personnel or the tenants to have the temperature range that they desired. And so it was very effective. And so, of course, when we flipped to air conditioning, we had to make sure all the windows were closed and they became sealed. And
Yeah.
and we were not permitted to. There are a few windows left that were not sealed for OSHA reasons, but other than that, we every window was sealed and no hot air could come in.
Well, now let's talk about something that happened in 1953
Oh,
in
the
May.
tornado.
In May. Yeah, you were working that day. You were on the 18th floor, correct?
18th floor.
And your job at that time, it was something to do with cards or something. What was
At that time, our company was real forward thinking. We used as part of our data processing center what they called the IBM 80-column card information source. And so these cards would have information that pertaining to the policy in any way, shape, or form. And my job at that time was to pay renewal commissions, and I would have these cards pulled out of the master file. And once the statement for the agent was created, okayed, and ready to go out, these cards had to be recycled back into the master file. All of this had to be done by card sorters, and on the south side of the building, we had our card sorter set up on the 18th floor, and it was going to take me about 2 days to rearrange all of these for they could be, used again for the following month. So the windows were up, and it being not air conditioned at that time, ever so often I would walk to the window when the machines were running and take a look out the window to the horizon. And that was, of course, the day of the tornado. And from about noon on, I could see the front moving in as a result of my job performance.
Yeah, really. I mean, you couldn't miss it from where you were as it was moving in from Hewitt and this
And from the
toward
from the
downtown
south
Waco.
side, yeah, it was
Yeah.
dark and black and ugly and green.
Yeah, so the windows, you had the windows up,
Oh yeah,
and that probably helped.
the process.
Somewhat.
Yes, it did. That process at that time, every morning, our maintenance crew would go through, open each department, turn the lights on, and raise the windows, especially if it were in the summertime. And we had ceiling fans, and we also had floor fans. And needless to say, we were famous for paperweights.
Mhm.
We had
Yeah.
we had to use a lot of paperweights, but nonetheless, we had the windows up, and we were able to envision, look, and see what's going on weather-wise. Very easy, and
Yeah.
I had that opportunity that day to do that.
So you were told we need to leave this floor
Yes.
because it was getting really
Yeah,
nasty.
the supervisors came through and said, put the windows down and go to the center of the building. And then by that was about 4:30. The tornado actually hit our building at 4:36 because that's when all the electricity popped. And by that time, working on the 18th floor, all of the people that had worked on the 20th floor, first floor down to 18 were ahead of us. They were already leaving the building,
Right.
and we had to go down the stairwell. And it was very, very black, very, very dark, and we were young and scared
Imagine.
and crying a lot.
Yeah.
And
And you had to hold on to each
and
other.
we had to
really.
hold on to each other
Yeah.
until we got down to I think when we got down to the 8th floor, we could there was a little bit of daylight. The rain had let up and the tornado was over. And I went to the window. A friend of mine said, come see out the window, which was the Austin Street side. I was on the 8th floor, and when I looked out that window, I could see the R.T. Dennis building had collapsed. And I think that was when we realized that this was such a tremendous tragedy.
Yeah. So many of the victims were in that building.
yes.
More than 100 people
Mhm.
did die in that tornado.
Yeah, there were 114 people that lost their lives. We lost one employee.
Really.
Our employee got off at 4:30. I'll backtrack just a little bit because we had so many tenants that normally worked 8 to 5. Our company hours were from 8:15 to 4:45. So traditionally, our company employees would start leaving about 4:45, and she had to open the cashier window on the 21st floor to accommodate people who wanted to pay their insurance premiums, which there were many at that time, because they had a chance to go up in the Alico building, and that was quite a treat for
Yeah.
them. And at 4:30, she got off and left the building and walked across the street to join her ride, and she got the wall of the R.T. Dennis building fell on her.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we hear, I did as an employee of WACO Radio, and how important WACO was in chronicling what happened and reporting on the aftermath, because WACO was in the Alico building.
They set up offices or studios in our building in 1933. The year that they actually left the building, I do not remember because they built their own building, I think, at the time. But it was before the tornado because the tall tower on top of the building was not here at the time of the tornado. But they did have some facilities that they were broadcasting from.
Yeah.
And
I remember hearing audio of Goodson McKee.
yeah,
I
he would
worked with
stand
him
on the
some,
corner
yeah.
with his microphone and interview people as they would come into. Another unique thing about the rescue effort was our second floor, which belonged to the First National Bank building, was used for command center. And so because we had water, our building was equipped for water. We had our own generators, we had water, and so all of the leadership of the city of Waco would come together and be in this floor. And cots were brought in and food. And so WACO can still broadcast, off the street, and they knew immediately who was here and what was going on and things of that nature. Yeah. It was very effective for us for such a tragedy.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and it's a treasure to me that you survived that, having actually gone through the tornado here in the Alico building.
Yes.
You say a lot of what helped with the weathering of that particular storm is all the beautiful marble that provided, a lot of added structure.
I would say stability into
Yeah.
the hallways and everything. Yes, the marble was very, very, very beautiful and very, very effective. But here again, if we go back to the original architects and their desire at the time was to build a building that would withstand hurricane load, and it was determined that Fifth and Austin, the corner of Fifth and Austin, is one of the windiest corners in town. And if you've ever been down there when the wind is blowing, you would have to agree.
Yeah, it just sort of comes right around. Well, in topography has a lot to do with weather and how all that works. Just a remarkable part of Waco history. And it sort of, when the tornado did its devastation in 1953, it kind of accelerated the move to the suburbs.
Yeah,
particularly for downtown merchants.
Yeah, they did. They
and
were. A few had already moved out. The Lake Air Mall had been built, and it was just it was just evident that at some point in time, some of our major stores would move out.
Yeah.
And the tornado just sort of.
Yeah.
And it also was a dreadful thing to say, but the damage to certain sections of East Waco enabled Baylor University to have a growth pattern and to pick up some more of the space that they needed to enhance their campus. And so we did have a few good things that came, but all in all, it was a tragic day.
Yeah. Well, I and what I did not know till I saw your interview is exactly when the big red letters ALICO went on the building. That really wasn't until the 60s, right?
That was in the early 60s.
And what kind of prompted that?
Well, I would suspicion, I don't really know for sure, but we were going to change our name. Prior to all of this, it was known as the Amicable Building.
Oh,
It was never referred to as the Alico Building until the lights went up. Prior to that, it was always, I'm going to the Amicable Building,
Yeah.
I work in the Amicable Building, or I've been to the Amicable Building.
Okay.
And so that effectively would be no more a legal name to a certain extent, because the company that owned and occupied it would now be called American Amicable. And so in order to have our letters out there and be known as the American Amicable, we just started calling it the Alico Building.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's more recent history. I was fascinated to learn that. Another interesting aspect of this building, back when it was originally built, was there was a spring, a natural spring,
Yes.
underneath that they had to deal with.
And for a couple of days they had trouble capping it, but they finally capped it, and we had a well down there that provided artesian water, nice and cool and chilled to the tenants in the building. And we had a fountain that went up and down the building in the hallway, and you could just take your glass and go out there and get you a nice cold glass of water.
Really?
On many occasions, because it was very, very warm in this building prior to air conditioning.
You drink a lot of water.
Yeah, and
No,
we
no
we
doubt.
shuffled many, many paperweights. Let me tell you that.
Well, I'm grateful that it's air conditioned. That is for sure. Yeah, it's just been it's a fascinating story, and neat to hear from someone who has seen so many decades of change
Change, yeah.
here. You know, you we talk about how Waco at one time so famously was quoted by Sam Jack McGlasson as being brain dead. Downtown Waco, not the case anymore.
And
Just your thoughts about how things have changed.
Oh, I just think it's wonderful, and I think it's beautiful. I think we have a lot of people that are involved and are anxious to help promote Waco, and it's all of its wonderful history, as well as its capability of being leaders in the corporate world. And so it's just delightful to see that finally taking place. There was a couple of decades in there where we were all working very hard to change the scenery, and it just didn't quite catch
Yeah,
hold.
the mall on Austin Avenue with
Yeah,
the
we
one
had
way
the mall. We worked on that,
and that
and
didn't
we
work
went
out.
through all that saga of changing it back where
Mhm.
the traffic could come and go, and just various things of that nature. And but we were very, very excited when it started getting back, and Baylor was beginning to expand its campuses, and it was just and we were having more retail as well as more manufacturing move into the community, and so we were just delighted to be able to see all this come about.
Yeah, of course, Chip and Joanna have really been a catalyst for that, and I can remember on Fridays I'd go pick up my mother, your older sister Ruby, and we'd go to lunch or do something. But anyway, we'd kind of drive around the outskirts where the silos were, and she said, when we were kids, we would ride our bicycles up to and they were old and rusty then. So yeah,
Oh, I can just imagine.
from your home there on Bells Hill, you grew up
Yeah.
on Bells Hill.
Yeah,
to ride your bikes around those silos, and
Yeah,
now
and
it
it
is
was
a
just-
vacation destination. Who'd
Yeah.
have thought?
And that is it's just fantastic. Because when the silos were originally built, they were part of some kind of a grain type.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were sorting and salvaging the grain, cattle, and all this kind of business. So there would be an aroma, a very sweet aroma of ground up grain.
Really?
And we if the wind were kind of right, you could smell it. and
But
it
you
would be
smell it
real
up
different.
here.
It would be real different. And
Oh.
yeah, I got tickled. We talked about that. Oh, they're grinding grain over there. we would laugh and giggle about that.
Oh man, so much we can talk about the building. You know so much about the history of it and the ins and outs. And for the later part of your career here, you were working as a manager, helping with placing
Oh.
people in the office
Yeah,
suites.
I took I got my real estate license, and with an emphasis on property management, and so I started the working as a real estate coordinator for the company and leasing, and of course we had lots of people that would want to put an antenna on top of the building.
Mm,
And we
bet.
went through that particular period of time where we were leasing antenna space. Then, as part of our company was moved to Houston in 1984, we were able to free up office space. So once again, round robin, we went back to being an office building with space for rent for various tenants. And we were very delighted to be able to do that and have other people, new people, share the love for our building like we did.
Well, Rogue Media is the latest on the list.
And we welcome them. And here I am speaking as though I'm still here, but
But it's a part of your life. I mean,
very
it's
few people realize that
Yeah.
it's my building.
yeah, it's your. Well, of course, it's your Queen of the Alico. Of course, it's your building. And in fact, in this article, there's a picture of you up on the roof. Was that scary?
It kinda, in a way. I had been up there several times, and of course, when I first went to work up here, several of us would take our sandwich and our big bottle of Coke and sit up there and have our lunch and
Really?
never think anything about it.
Yeah.
But
That's neat.
through the years, liability insurance and everything, we became more cautious about who had access to the roof, and I would have a chance to go up there very frequently, and I did appreciate that. I did enjoy that very, very much, and it's windy, very, very windy up there.
I'll bet. I'll bet. Well, it has been so much fun to get you on tape this way, to have you
I
be a
thank you.
guest on the podcast, because she's a little reluctant when it comes to doing
Oh,
interviews.
I'm sorry, but I'm very, very reluctant now.
Well, but it's just a delight to, because it's been a few years, I guess, since you've come down here, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't get down as frequently as I used to. I came about 6 weeks ago for a friend who was retiring, and that was indeed a joy. But COVID kind of knocked a lot of us out because many of
Yeah.
them had to work from home, and some of those are still working from home that are still employed. And but it was a delight to be in the building and to walk the halls again.
Yeah. Well, she introduced me to Joe Webb, who is the current manager of everything, and we're going to do a little roaming around and see what kind of trouble we can get
there
into.
Are a lot of
I
right.
try to make some paper airplanes
Yeah.
and throw them out the window.
And as things changed, and we became part of the world of marketing space, we had to lower the ceilings, and of course that was real easy. And we wanted to do that to put in effect to allow all of the wiring. When the building was built in 1910, it was wired for electricity by all means, but as we, had our demands, especially for air conditioning, we went to stronger and stronger. We had our own generator.
Well, in fact, when it was first built, there were oil lamps.
We had oil
the
lamps,
hallways.
and we had our own oil field. We had a big oil tank and a coal tank in the basement.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
but there were little oil lamps. You could walk up and down the hallway and turn the oil lamps, and that was people like that. And we had many, many tenants. We've had a beauty shop in the building. In the early years, and we had a lot of bookkeepers. Of course, today they're all CPAs, and lots of the legal community.
And some medical too, right?
And we had a lot of the
and-
medical people,
Yeah.
dentists, and a lot of them that were very, very.
So a very well used
yes.
building, besides being the home
and then
of Amicable Life Insurance.
the community, the city of Waco was already beginning to build other buildings as well. The Praetorian building came along, the Professional building came along, and the Raleigh Hotel, which, of course, those buildings are still existing, and then the Medical Arts building up on 9th Street. They were all coming along as well and helped fill the gap of people needing office space. And it was quite the thing in the 20s and 30s.
Well, it's exciting to be here and to be a part of it and to have a chance to visit with you.
It's certainly exciting for me,
Yeah, good, good.
irrespective of how I'm feeling.
Well, we are glad, glad that you had a chance to be with us. And thank you for joining us, and we will be back again with Central Texas Life.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.